Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host Jorge Martin. Who wants to go to Cheesehead Country? Who wants to go to Cheesehead Country for our NFL Insider Series? I wish I had one of the hats, one of the Cheesehead hats. You get Familia. You guys all know I'm lactose intolerant, but I may have to take a lactate for this one because I'm going to take, we're going to take a bite out of Cheesehead Country with our buen amigo Dusty EVELY. But first, before I bring him in, I want to make sure you're following Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that button. I know you guys, Familia, you have been coming out. Some of you have just liked and subscribed because I've seen the numbers jump up in this NFL Insider Series. You guys know the quality people were coming in, and also want to make sure you're using the promo code Familia when you go to Underdog Fantasy. Every dollar you put in up to $100, you're going to get matched. You're going to get matched up to that point. So let's get in there. Best ball drafts. I'm in like 8 of them right now. So let's go, and let's get into it with our compadre Dusty EVELY. I mean, well, first off, you're going to see you find him, all his content on that Twitter X sphere, whatever we're calling it today, at Dusty EVELY. So get him in there. Also, you're finding him at Pack-A-Day Podcast. You find him at Cheesehead TV. You find him at Packer Report. And you're finding him right here on the Familia FFB YouTube page and podcast. So, mi amigo, bienvenidos. Welcome.
Thank you so much, man. Listen, this is what, our third or fourth year doing this. I look forward to this every single year. I tell everyone that will listen, I talked about you earlier this week. Someone was like, what's the food you've fallen in love with in the past couple of years? I was like, well, my dude Jorge Martin hooked me up with birria tacos, and that's my food. So no, look forward to this every year. Talk about with you, man. Absolutely blessed. Thanks for having me back.
It's still, you and believe me, you ever get to Southern California, LA area, you got to come to Mama Martin's house, okay? And you're gonna you're gonna get best of the best. You may get it in a burrito, you may get it in a torta with a big thick. Either way, it's just
however it comes, I'll eat it, man. However it
heaven
comes.
On earth. So, and it was. Last year, I told you off camera. I asked you one of the hardest questions that I think I asked anybody last year in the 32-part series. That is Jordan Love good? Because we had no question. We had every question, just a handful of games, a handful of snaps. I think by midway point of the season, we got our answer. But you laid it out how it was going to be. Now we had the QB5 on the season for fantasy, over 30 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards throwing. I mean, he didn't, he wasn't like some of the guys in the domes. He did it in the frozen tundra Lambeau Field. Mi amigo. I think you'll like this, but y'all, Familia, I'm a Beatles fan. Jordan Love is all you need. Where does he go from last year to this year?
I mean, it's what I assume I talked about last. Like I said, I hope I didn't make a fool out of myself last year because I'd never remember what I say. But we saw what I hoped we were going to see. I mean, we were going off of very limited information, what we saw, but it was, footwork had improved, reads had improved, decision making, feel within the offense, and we saw that, and some of that like early season stuff. I don't even think that wasn't necessarily him. They had so many young dudes around him. It was youngest offense in the league. I think youngest skill positions in 20 years, something like that. I'm probably wrong on that. Give me fact checkers there, I guess, given the spirit of the evening here. But there were so many times, even there was stuff like Aaron Jones, where you would see like a little hand signal, or he's like, we're going over there, and guys running wrong routes, and you could see him, Love, like he's reading the defense, he's got the pre-snap, he's got the post-snap, he gets back, he's reading where he's supposed to be, and dude's not there, and then he's got to improvise. So first half of the season, like I know his numbers didn't look great, he didn't look great at times. I was at the Saints game. The first 3 quarters of that were just brutal to watch, and then the fourth quarter he came alive there. But he really was kind of from the jump kind of what I hoped he was going to be. It just took everyone else a little bit of time to get together. Offensive line took a little bit to gel, so the run game wasn't off to the greatest start. But once everyone started gelling, and we saw that late in the season, I wish Christian Watson would have been healthy, because I think this offense with Watson is just a monster. But we saw Wicks come on later in the year. We saw, Doubs in his second year. Jayden Reed looked good from the jump, but he looked better as the season went on. Like, you had these rookie receivers. they just once they kind of got in sync, it's what you thought it was going to be. I think there's a point in the middle of the season where I think the floor kind of dialed back the amount of offense he was throwing out there. It was more play action, it was less motion, kind of simplify that stuff like in season. And then after they unleashed that, yeah, I mean, Love looked tremendous. Again, decision making was great. He struggled with, and it reared its head again the last play of the season. He struggled with at times early in the season knowing when to throw the ball away, knowing when to give up on a play. About the halfway point of the season, he got better about that, but there were still times where I can make this play. He tried to throw 30 yards late down the middle of the field in the last play against the Niners and it bit him. But that's an area he can improve on. But he got better at that for the most part as season went along. If the first read isn't there, he's got answers. His cadence, I was looking at something earlier today. His cadence got so much better in terms of getting the defense to tell him what he needed to do. And then he went to the right place. And if it wasn't there, he had answers. And if that wasn't there, he's got his legs. So, I mean, I think consistency a little bit. We saw some of that in the last half of the season. I think he did get better at that, but I think some of his mid-range accuracy still leaves a little bit desired. The deep ball looked bad early in the season, but I think that was really more an issue of timing with anything else because that looked better as everyone got better around him. So I think the deep ball is fine, but the intermediate stuff I still have some concerns with. And really, I mean, some of it is just like regression a little bit because if you look at him on third down, especially late in the season, he's doing like 3rd and 9 and he's ripping the ball and all those things are hitting. And that's just like luck of the draw. Like that's just not going to happen that often. So if he gets better at 1st and 2nd down, he doesn't have to do that. But I do think that the late season 3rd down conversion stuff, I think that takes a tick back. But overall, I think the numbers I think would probably be about the same, maybe a little better. I think it was 4,200 yards, 32 touchdowns, something like that.
32.
I could see the interceptions being up a little bit because he could have thrown a couple more of those, but I can see the touchdowns being about where they are a little bit higher. And then I think the yards is tough because I do think they want to run a little more. So I think everything will be a little more in line with it's one of those, I think the numbers will be roughly the same. I think he will look better doing it. I think he'll look more efficient doing it, but I do think there'll be a couple more picks in there. So about the same, but just more consistency throughout the entire year as opposed to like the really hot and cold that we saw last year.
Because you know what, and was part of it missing Aaron Jones? Because I really felt like he was the adult in the room on that offense.
I mean, that was a big part of it. AJ Dillon just isn't that dynamic. Jones is the guy that was. I mean, we saw Jones show up big in like that Cowboys game. His pass pro stuff. I mean, they love talking about that after the fact. Like Jones was freelancing half the time on that stuff and just knocking Micah Parsons' block off. So missing Jones, I think, was big, especially when you did have all those young guys. Like you didn't have that outlet. It was you had either AJ Dillon or younger running backs in there as well when the receiver wasn't where he was supposed to be. So I do think that had something to do with it for sure. But late in the season, I don't really think that mattered that much. I think once the offense caught up, I just think some of the mid-season stuff, I think you could say like if Jones is there, that looks better. But really, the offense as a whole just needed to come together. I mean, they knew that from the jump, right? Like they knew we're throwing out. It's all 1st and 2nd year wide receivers. Like this is going to look bad for a while, and then we hope it looks good. And eventually, it looked good. It just took a little bit to get there.
And one thing I just looked up while we were talking because I remembered week 10 to 18. Week 10 is kind of like when it started to click, and week 10 to 18, 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he was the QB3 overall at that point. So and is there last question on Love? Is there something you saw in the playoffs that has you hyped about him? You know, you talked about where you think the numbers are going to be, but is there something you saw in the playoffs, especially in that scintillating game against the Cowboys and that great opening against the 49ers that has you a little bit extra pumped that could carry over?
Yeah, I mean, as odd as it is, I mean, I think the Niners for sure. I mean, the Cowboys game was interesting because that was a defense that was good all year, but they did have troubles against kind of better offenses. And they ran into, not only did they run into a buzzsaw, like that Cowboys offense didn't do them any favors. They missed an easy pass to CeeDee Lamb in the middle of the field on like a 3rd and 3 that would have kept it going. And then Jair jumps a route like on the next drive, and the Packers get the ball in at like the 19 or something, score a touchdown off of it. So that game went off the rails. As a Packers fan, I've seen those plenty of times, but it went off the rails early for him. So it was kind of a weird game. But still, I mean, that was, I think what I take from the Cowboys game was they they had a plan against the pass rush because Micah Parsons is good. Like they have a good pass rush. They had a good plan for that. I do wonder how that looks with Aaron Jones gone, but we did see multiple times, not just in that game, but other times too. Love's not afraid of making throws with the dude in his face. There's multiple times in that game, Micah Parsons is bearing down and he's waiting until the last minute. He's sidestepping in the pocket. He's not bailing, and he's just ripping that thing. And so I think that was promising that he's not shrinking. He's not falling back in the face. He's not eyes down looking to scramble. Like I say a young quarterback, his first year starter, fourth year in the league, but he's not looking to bail. He's still looking to make that play, and he can do that. And against the Niners, it was kind of the same thing. Obviously the last play looms large, but he's playing a really nice game. LaFleur called a really good game. He was playing a great game, though. Like Love was again the face of a very good defense. He didn't really back down. He was throwing some incredible shots. He bailed when he needed to and was making throws on the run. So, I mean, that's like the Cowboys had a good defense that I think wasn't as good as the numbers. Niners legit had a tremendous defense, and Love was taking a lot from them for the vast majority of that game. So watching him do that against elite defenses, back-to-back weeks in the playoffs on a huge stage, his first trip there, I think that's huge. That gives me a lot of hope going forward.
Yeah, you just gave me a flashback to Dan Fouts. Waiting until the very last second, knowing he's going to get lit up, but just waiting to take that shot. And it, I saw, I hate that, he's been compared to Hall of Famers already, Jordan Love, but I mean, it just kind of reminded me of that style of play. So
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something to think about there. Good. Okay. So you talked about the youngest, the one of the youngest offenses in a long time. Fact checkers, you guys let us know. Put a comment in there.
Sure.
There's been so much talk about comparing having Davante Adams as the stud who gets you 160, 170 targets, and that you just feed or you got four wide receivers who are all good in different skill sets. Can you help me make sense of how the pecking order is going to go on this one?
Man, I wish I could. So, I mean, that's been the question, right? I mean, I think ideally, if you look at how this breaks down, ideally Watson is what you would think of as wide receiver one, like not traditional wide receiver one. A lot of times, I think when I hear people say wide receiver one, it is that Davante Adams. It's like the backside traditional X receiver that's gonna get your one-on-ones, gonna get you a bucket. Watson is not that, but he's a better route runner than people give him credit for in like freak speed. When he's not catching balls, he's affecting the defense. And they had him out there when he wasn't 100% healthy, and he's still they're putting two guys on him. Like they're terrified of his speed as well. They should be. He's a tall, strong man who runs like a 4.2. Like that's freak speed stuff. Like Randy Moss numbers, as far as like physical testing is what he is. And so I think he can, and again, better route runner than he gets credit for. There are times he'll turn the wrong way, but he's not MVS. He's not just a speed merchant. He's a guy he can sink really well. He'll run those comebacks. He'll run those outs. He'll run those digs. He'll run a drag. You get him in space. He's just his quickness is really good as well. And so, I mean, I think he's your guy that if you're looking at like, okay, who's the guy that could have a monster season? Not maybe traditional wide receiver one, but like monster season. I think it's Watson. The question with him has been health, and he had some stuff this past year. They found, I think, one leg had 20% less muscle mass than the other leg, and so he went to a specialist for that, and they're working on that. And so the hope is that his hamstring issues are behind him. I don't know if that's true because part of me doesn't know that a man that big should move that fast, and he's always going to struggle with that. But if they can mitigate that a little bit, I think he's wide receiver one. And then after that, I think two is, from in my book, is Jayden Reed. I think some of the stuff Reed showed last year, he mostly inside, mostly kind of a slot guy, but they play so much condensed formations. Like slot is not always slot. It's like you could just interchange those guys sometimes. He did play a decent amount outside, especially middle of the season. He had games where he was up over 50% playing outside. But they also like him in the kind of gadgety role. They'll give him jet sweeps. They'll get those little touch passes, stuff like that. But he's not afraid to go over the middle. He'll take stuff deep. He had in that Saints game a beautiful just seam ball, full out, laid out extension, diving in tight coverage. Like he will make those catches. just absolutely freaky with the ball in his hand. So for the beyond like when I think of a gadget receiver, I think of like, oh, get him the ball in space, like legit wide receiver, can run legit routes, has great hands, likes to block, which is big in LaFleur's offense, so he'll stay out there. So I think Reed's number 2. I've got.
Can I give you one
go ahead.
Real quick?
Yeah.
One real quick nickname. I don't know if you've heard it. Marcus Grant, friend of our amigo of the show, he from NFL Network. He calls Jayden Reed Dairyland Debo. So
I love it.
If you end up using it, yeah, just make sure to give it, give that proper attribution to Marcus.
I'll make sure to credit him. He's not quite as thick as Debo, but yeah, yeah. I think they not too much, but I think he got about 10 snaps in the backfield this past year. So maybe we can amp that up a little bit, get those Debo numbers up. 3 for me, and I think they just talking up Romeo Doubs today. But I think 3 for me is Wicks. I think what he showed towards the end of last year, he kind of profiles as that kind of backside X, which Doubs was kind of doing. But Wicks already seems like a better route runner. His hands are better, a little more wiggle. Seems like a little more top-end speed. Doubs will have these monster games. In the Cowboy game, I think he had 120 yards at the half or something like that. So Doubs got that in him. But I think Wicks showed more consistency in that role than Doubs did as the season went on. So I think he's going to see some more. Like, he looked really good. Like, he didn't get a ton of playing time. I think his situation in college was not great coming out of Virginia. And I think it took him a little bit to get his feet underneath him. But last half of the season, Wicks looked great. So he's my 3. And then 4, it's not even wide receiver. I got Luke Musgrave. I'm curious.
Ooh, wow.
Well, so this is the thing. I'm curious what they do with Kraft out there. Kraft was borderline unplayable early in the year. And Musgrave was out there, I think 95% of snaps before I got injured. Like, Musgrave didn't come off the field. After he got injured, Kraft came in, played really well. So I wonder if we see more balance with the tight end stuff there. But I think Musgrave's going to be out there a lot, and they like him as a receiver. Like, they will throw him. They had the big completion on leak with him against the Bears, and then also against the Cowboys in the playoffs. Like, they like him as that seam stretcher. Love missed like a couple times wide open down the middle on like a Tampa 2 look. That would have been like another like 60-yard gains, both of them. So he's going to be out there a lot. He's going to get his opportunities. So I've got Musgrave, because I think once you get past wide receiver 3, who's going to be out there that much? Like, Doubs is probably a dude. Bo Melton showed some stuff last year. He had a big game, and he had a touchdown against the Niners as well. But I think the Vikings, Bo Melton, if I'm not mistaken, in the Vikings game, week 17, was the first receiver to go over 100 yards for the Packers on the year, which is just insane. So I mean,
last week of the season,
just absolutely insane. So I think that guys will get their opportunities, but I think the snaps are limited. So yeah, then what I say, Watson, Reed, Wicks, and Musgrave, assuming Watson is healthy. Which I'm crossing my fingers on.
So I also co-host an injury podcast, the Injury Prone podcast with Dr. Aaron Porras. And a few weeks ago, he talked about Christian Watson, like what he needed to do. That, he talked about the body scan, and what he talked about was, and he's worked with athletes, football players, to try and get that, who have hamstring issues, and it's just everything. It's how they're, what they're, I mean, just everything down to the diet, how much they're sleeping and everything like that. So, maybe there is that if there, as long as there is that whole body commitment, maybe he could mitigate it. To me, he's a screaming bargain going in like the 7th, 8th round in underdog drafts. So he's just, to me at that point, if you've already filled your top 3 receivers, take a shot, because he's, we've seen it. He had that 4-game stretch in 2022. He had 4 touchdowns in 3 games last year before he got hurt. So, and you said it yourself. Maybe he doesn't get 150 targets, but 110 to 120.
Well, the thing, if he gets 80,
but
like he gets the ball in his hand, like he's going to put up numbers. That's the thing. Like, I don't think he's a guy that needs volume. I just think when he touches the ball, he's going to do insanely good things with it. So I don't think he's ever going to be like a 100, like what the height of Devontae was like 160, 170, or like Antonio Brown. Like, that's how many targets they were getting. I think if he gets like 70 targets, if Watson's 70 targets, those numbers can still be bonkers just based on like his profile and what he can do with it.
Small sample size. And you mentioned Dontayvion Wicks. He is kind of like the I don't know, the love child or something for the fantasy community this year. The folks who really grind the wide receivers for fantasy are just absolutely in love. His yards per route run, he was the highest one of all of the 4 receivers. So it's going to be hard to predict on a week-to-week basis who could be the one to go off. So
yeah, I think that's it, because I think you had like Doubs was like under 20 yards before that Cowboys game for 3 games or something. Yeah. And then he went for 120 and a half, I think 150 or 160 on the game. Like you have no idea what they're going to do.
Oh man. Well, let's go to running back. Yeah, we already touched on the tight ends. I'm glad you dove in on the tight ends, but Josh Jacobs, he had that monster 2022 season for the Raiders. I think the fantasy community is hoping for that. He's going in the 50s, around 5 in underdog drafts. Are we potentially look at the role that Aaron Jones had late in the season, that where he was getting 15, about close to 20 touches per game, including the playoffs. Could that be could we be transferring that to Josh Jacobs?
I think so. I've seen a lot of people talking about this, and I've seen a lot of people saying like, I don't think that he's going to get like a ton of carries, a ton of touches. I just, based on the running back room where it is now, it seems like he's going to be their main dude. Like, they're going to spell him. Dillon is still there on some weird contract that no one's used in 10 years or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I was like, I don't know. I didn't even know this was a thing until he signed it. And then they drafted MarShawn Lloyd, who like just lightning in a bottle if he can hold on to the ball. So, I mean, I don't think either of those 2 guys right now. And then you've got Emmanuel Wilson back from last year, who was like preseason darling, had I think 60-yard touchdown run on the preseason. And when he was out there, he was mainly fine, but like the speed does not look like it translates to Sundays the way it did during preseason. So I'm not super high on him. Like, I think they've got a couple other guys right now. Those are the 4 main guys right now. So if you look at Josh Jacobs, who is Josh Jacobs, and then you look at AJ Dillon, who has never really performed like you wanted him to. Like, he had a Titans game, I think, in his rookie year or second year. He's had moments, but he's never really been that dude. Lloyd, a rookie who has had some issues, and LaFleur loves guys. I mean, you're not going to see the field that much if you can't pass protect that much, and rookies have a very hard time doing that. So he's not going to be out there a ton, I don't think. Special packages probably, but that's about it, especially to start. And then Wilson, who at this point I'm not even thinking is going to make the team. I just don't know how it's not going to be Josh Jacobs. So to me, that does seem like if they've got a guy they're leaning on, I don't think it's committee. I do think it's Josh Jacobs.
It's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I was on the Yahoo Fantasy podcast with Matt Harmon, and we talked about which running back duo could rise up, similar to David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, where where both are fantasy viable starters. We did not talk about Josh Jacobs and MarShawn Lloyd, but in the comments there were probably at least 3-4 Cheesehead fans who were like, what about Josh Jacobs and MarShawn Lloyd? And prologue to that, just last week I sat down with Graham Barfield from Fantasy Points. He really grinds rookie running backs. And he said that MarShawn Lloyd, just loved him from a skill standpoint, but he was one of the lowest. He may have been the lowest ranked pass protector. And he had a tough part, and he had a tough time holding onto the ball, which Damian Harris, the former running back of the New England Patriots, said, if you can't hold on to the ball, you're no good to me. Specifically about MarShawn Lloyd. So maybe, but that's why it's got me thinking Josh Jacobs, because you said it earlier, they're going to run more, right? They're going to run a little bit more.
I think so. At the very least, they're going to run at least as much as they did last year. I think they're switching up. They've been trying for years, dude. They've been trying for years to get to more like a power running attack, and they haven't been able to do it. And I think this year, I think Jacobs runs better that way. I think Dillon runs better that way. So I think this year they're pulling the trigger on it, and I do think they're going to. And we saw it. I mean, even in the Cowboys game, we talked about Love's performance there. the defense played well, but also they just ran the ball. I think Love had 23 attempts in that game or something. It's not like he threw the ball 40 times. So I do think that's what they want to do. I think they want to run it. I think they want to grind it out. I think they want to find explosives on the ground as well. Like I do think with moving to a more power thing with Josh Jacobs, that's what they want to do. They want to run, and it's not just they don't want to grind out 4-yard gains. I do think they're looking for explosives there. So I mean, and I think that's the Lloyd thing as well. I mean, you can. I say this like it's easy. You can teach a dude to hold onto the ball. Like we saw, this is aging me a bit as if my beard is also aging me, all the gray in it I currently have. I mean, yeah. Tiki Barber couldn't hold onto the ball until he could. Like you can teach that. I'm not overly, I'm concerned about that in his rookie year. I'm not concerned about that like long term. But this year, it does feel like Josh Jacobs is the dude, and then AJ Dillon's going to come in for 10 carries a game or something, would be my guess. And then MarShawn Lloyd will get 3 chances a game. Like that's basically, I think, what it comes down to.
Yeah, he'll have to earn his time. So, but yeah, you're right. Pass pro, you don't pass protect. If you don't pass protect, it's hard to get on the field. So, I think we got everybody from offensive standpoint. O-line, obviously we're replacing Bakhtiari, but there's been a lot of this has traditionally been, become a strong unit that it coalesces into a strong unit. Kind of looking that way this year.
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple questions there. I mean, I think Rasheed Walker held down left tackle position after Bakhtiari went down after week 1, and he had a really rough start to the season and then kind of even out as it went on. I think he's probably going in as the de facto starter at left tackle, but I do think they can improve there. He showed some really good stuff. So if he's the dude, he's the dude. We'll find out fairly early. He did look good down the stretch. Elton Jenkins at left guard. I assume he's staying at left guard. I think the center position's up for grabs. Josh Myers is there now. They talked him up a lot last year, but he was hit and miss. I think he's good for what they want to do in the run game. As far as like they can pull 5 dudes if they want. His pass pro has never really come along. So I think you can upgrade there. The big question mark there on the O-line is Zach Tom. Zach Tom's right tackle. Zach Tom played tremendous right tackle last year. But he also had played center in college. So there's a chance that they bumped Tom inside. Then they also drafted Jordan Morgan in the first round.
That's right. Yeah.
And my thought is because John Runyon Jr. signed elsewhere. He went to the Giants, I think, for $30 million over 3 years or something. And he was the right guard last year. But even when he was the right guard, they were swapping him out with Sean Ryan, who was a 3rd round pick from a couple years ago. And Sean Ryan didn't look great. So I think you need to look at the right guard position to see what happens there. If it was me, just taking a wild guess right now, I think the line looks roughly like it did last year. I think they go out with Rasheed Walker, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers at center. You plug Jordan Morgan in at right guard, and then Zach Tom at right tackle. And if they need to shuffle some stuff around, they shuffle some stuff around. They got I'm blanking on his name. Kid out of Duke in the 5th or 6th round, I think this past year. I'm blanking on what his name is. They grabbed a couple of linemen. They didn't grab any last year. They grabbed a couple this year. So I think they've got some flexibility there. You've got some dudes that like Caleb Jones is a guy who's just an absolute monster that has never done anything. And so they hope he's developmental. Maybe he comes along a little bit this year, but I do think they need to upgrade that right guard position. I don't think Sean Ryan or Royce Newman, I don't think he makes a squad because he was kind of in the mix last year for that as well. I'm interested to see what happens there, but I mean, they've done such a good job at coaching up the offensive line. I think whatever they end up doing is going to end up being fine. But I do think the interior of that line there, it gets a little muddy in terms of what they're going to do, and they've not really tipped their hand on that. So I'm curious where that goes.
Oh man, oh God, you got me so pumped up for football. I
me too.
I love doing these. This is my 3rd one today, and I'm as fired up as I can be. So, amigo, this is awesome. You're killing it. So I remember one other moment from last year. I asked you about the defense, and you kind of had it's like every year. They're going to give up. They're going to give up plenty. They're not going to defend the run, and you got a new DC. I know we hear platitudes, but different. The way you see the personnel, where are they strongest against?
Oh man! First of all, I love this hire. It's one of those when they hired him, I was like, I knew the name vaguely, but didn't know much about him. I've dug in. I wrote a piece about him for the Cheesehead TV Draft Guide this year, so I dug in pretty deep. I think I think where they're strongest, where they're set to go. I think, man, the safety room legitimately went from I don't know who's playing. Like you don't know who's playing the safety room to they signed McKinney in free agency, the big, that was like my dude. It's like they got the Halfley defense, which they want to play more single high. McKinney was like the A1 guy. Go get Xavier McKinney. They got Xavier McKinney. All right, they did that. They got Javon Bullard in the second round, who was like, if they get one safety in this draft, please let it be Bullard. They got Bullard, who can play slot. He can play deep. He can play in the box, like a versatile dude. You can swing him anywhere. If they get two safeties in the draft, please let one of them be Katana Ladapo, the Gato Ladapo, who I think is going to be ready for camp. He was in a walking boot. They still got Anthony Johnson Jr. from last year. They drafted Evan Williams as well. So I think the safety room went from, again, I went from Anthony Johnson Jr. might be your starting free safety, which is terrifying, to he might be your number 4 or 5 guy. And he showed flashes last year, but that group right there. And I think what Halfley wants to do, where he wants to be able to be versatile and variable, and he wants to be able to play. He wants to play from a single high shell, but he will like drift back into 2 high, and he'll mix up his plan depending on what he wants to do. I think they've got a really good set for. I think they want to be aggressive up front. I think that's the big thing. They want to be aggressive up front, which fits with like Devontae Wyatt, who looked really good when he was out there. As far as like a penetrating front, like him and Kenny Clark next to each other, I think will be good. And if they're wrong, you now have the linebackers behind them. There's a grab. I don't know why I'm blanking on Edge Cooper out of A&M.
Oh yeah,
they drafted him, who I think will take his lumps a little bit. But you got Quay Walker in year 3 now coming in. He showed some flashes as well. So you get the guys up front are aggressive. You got the linebackers are cleaning up, but you also got some versatile safeties behind him as well. I think the spine of that defense is way better this year than it has been. I don't know, in any year since Nick Collins has been playing. Like, it's been a long time since I've been this excited about a defense before the season, which might say more about the state of the defense recently than it does about this current defense now that I'm thinking about it. But I do think with what and Halfley, I mean, he talks. You can listen to him talk. It's hard not to get excited about him talking. But if you listen to him talk, you watch his defenses, how they played both Ohio State and Boston College. You watch his 4-year run at Boston College where he was not the DC, he was the head coach, but those were his defensive principles he wanted to put in. How he shifted based on who he had in there, based on who they were playing. He talks, and it's hard. You get excited to hear him talk, but then you watch what he does, and like, okay, he lives this. Like he knows what he's doing. He seems like a smart guy, and he got out of Boston College because he got tired of all the NIL stuff and the stuff that they have at Boston College and the additional kind of hoops you have to jump to get there. Like he said at the time, he's like, I just want to coach ball, man. And you could hear it the way he talks. You can see it in the way that his players play. You can hear it in the way that his players talk about him. So I think based on like, again, single high, aggressive. Like if you've got a couple terms to describe him, single high and aggressive. And I think some of those guys will take their lumps. Again, Edge Cooper, I'm really excited about. But first-year linebackers usually struggle. Javon Bullard, I'm excited about. Safeties usually take a little time to adjust. Like you're not. So I think you're going to take your lumps early, but they've got the pieces, I think, to play a very good version of this defense. So I think it could be a little dicey at the beginning, but I think it's going to be a very exciting defense to watch that by the midpoint of the year really comes together. We're going to see more turnovers this year than we have any year under Joe Barry. I can tell you that right now.
Oh, and right when the weather's turning, right? So when rock solid defense is really a big deal when you're playing Lambeau Field. So awesome, man. Awesome. Oh, amigo. I'm
with you. I'm with you.
It's the end of the day. I did not sleep enough last night. I'm on adrenaline right now. You got me pumped full of adrenaline. I'm just fired up. So, okay. What can I recommend for you? What can I recommend for you for on the food side, on the Mexican food side?
Oh man, I don't know. You gave me birria tacos, dude. I don't know, dude. What else you got for me? I've been doing.
Have you tried Al Pastor?
I have, but it's been a little bit actually. Is that the like pork and pineapple? With
the pineapple?
Yeah. So I bought, I'll tell you this. Last year after Christmas, I bought a Blackstone grill. I've been eyeing one for forever. Got a Blackstone. I've been cooking on that pretty much every single day I can. And so I've been doing carne asada and I bought stuff to do whatever you just said. I'm blanking on the name. El Pastor. I've not done it yet because I'm scared, because it's something different and I'm scared. But that is something I've got on deck to try this week. So if you've got any tips or tricks for me on that front, by all means, dude.
I don't, but I'm gonna send you my mom's marinade for carne asada.
Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah, I'm in for that.
Secret ingredient, beer. Yes.
I'm in. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% in.
But I'll give you the. I'll send you a DM with that, and with the Blackstone, it's gonna be done in like a minute, in 2 minutes. and the only problem that I have when I'm making carne asada, when I'm on the grill at carne asada, is that there's not as much as people are expecting to get, because I'm just chomping right off the grill. Yep. Give me a good beer, a little cerveza, a little carne asada. It's like, okay, this one's for everybody. This is my piece. This is for everybody. This is my piece, fresh off the grill.
I buy double the meat, and then I just get around that problem. That's all I do.
Perfecto. Oh, mi amigo. All right. Well, I'm not having carne asada tonight, but I'm gonna jump out for dinner. But hey, you know what? Let's please feel free, pump whatever you got coming up.
So I don't have a ton right now that I'm doing. A Pack a Day podcast we got coming out on Wednesdays. We took a little hiatus there, but we are back there. I mean, with Sarah Kelleher and Steve Perhatch, known them for, I guess, 5 years now. I think we just decided. So that's on Wednesdays, and then also on Wednesdays, I've got a couple left in this series over on Cheesehead TV. I decided to try to learn the playbook, try to learn Matt LaFleur's playbook, and a copy of his 2019 playbook. And the best way I decided to do that is just jump into the fire, man, and just start writing about it. So every Wednesday on Cheesehead TV, I've been trying to find one play per game of the season and breaking down the play call as much as humanly possible. The motion calls, the formation, the concept, the reads, all of that stuff. Like real deep nerd stuff, man. I honest to God, I don't know why anyone reads this. But that's up every Wednesday on Cheesehead TV. I've got this week I had a really fun one that was the Giants game, which was like the go-ahead touchdown to Malik Heath, which was the first time I looked at a can call. So we get like all the mechanics of canning a call and what it looks like beforehand and afterwards and blah, 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 blah. And then next week I've got the first touchdown to Jayden Reed against the Vikings game. And I think after that, I'm looking at the Luke Musgrave leak touchdown against the Cowboys. So digging into that as much as humanly possible. It's deeply nerdy. I don't know how it's interesting, but I've learned a ton and I've been having a blast. So that's what I'm doing. And then after that, I got to figure out what I'm going to do, but that's what I've got coming out now. So Wednesdays on Cheesehead TV, if you want to read just deeply nerdy X's and O's stuff, by all means, stop by and read some of it.
Love it. No, it's good stuff. And then before you know it, we're going to be in, it's going to be a month from now, and training camp's going to be here, and there's going to be so much great news coming on a daily basis. So mi amigo, muchas gracias. Make sure, once again, familia, make sure you're following him at Dusty EVELY on the Twitter sphere. Follow him. Oh man, I'm so truly grateful for this series, because it's brought people like you into my life, and it's not lost on me someone giving up some time to sit down and drop some knowledge. But yeah, I've so appreciated everything, and giving you my mom's carne asada recipe is marinade is the least I can do. So mi amigo, muchas gracias. Familia, muchas gracias. Once again, if you haven't already, Familia FFB on YouTube. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you want this on audio, to Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. So, but you want to see our faces. So get in there, leave a comment. I'll you. Also, make sure you're going to Underdog Fantasy. Use that underdogfantasy.com. Use the promo code Familia. Get in there. So once again, you can find me at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter. I push out all my content that's going out to Yahoo, RotoWire, Fantasy Pros, where some baseball, but football's coming. Football stuff is coming. So muchas gracias everybody for joining us, and remember, todos somos familia. Salud.